Alright, so in this video we're looking at multiplying surds. So by the end of this video you should be able to take some surds and multiply them in a number of different ways. Let's take a look at one really simple one to get us started so we can see how it works. Here's our question. Okay, so here's example number 1. Root 3 times root 11. Now the easiest way to do this is to multiply them by each other. So you're going to end up with the square root of 3 times the square root of 11 is equal to the square root of 3 times 11. So they're both roots, so they can go under the one root together. So the square root of 3 times 11 is equal to the square root of 33. Okay, so really simple. Take the two numbers, multiply them together, they stay under the root together. Let's take a look at a slightly more complicated one so you can see some of the different ways that this stuff can happen. Let's do root 5 times 2 root 7. Okay, this one's slightly more complicated because you've got a number out the front here. Now, in this case, that number out the front doesn't really have any friends. You remember that multiply there is by itself, so it's actually root 5 times 2 times root 7. Okay, so let's deal with the roots first. It's going to be root 5 times root 7. That doesn't really change. Root 5 times root 7. So that's going to be, and then our 2's left out the front. So easy way to think about it, 2 is outside of the surds, the 5 and the 7 is inside the surds, it's under the square root sign. So that finishes off as 2 root, and 5 times 7 is 35. Okay, we'll move on to one. It's probably as complicated as these can really get. If you can get this last one that I look at, you're pretty spot on. 3 root 7 times 4 root, let's say 8. Okay, 3 root 7 times 4 root 8. Now this is, it's really straightforward. The ones that are outside of the surds, the 3 and the 4, you can see that they're outside the surd. We multiply them together. And the ones that are inside the surd, we multiply them together. Okay, so 3 times 4 root 7 times 8. It's going to be 12 root, and 7 times 8 is 56. Okay, now if you get to that stage, you're doing okay, but you should probably also simplify it. You should look at 56, and I can see that that's something like 56 can also be written as 4 times 14. And then that 4 can come out the front. So it'll be 12 times, remember when the 4 comes out the front, it doesn't stay as a 4, it becomes a 2. So 12 times 2 root 14. And we can finish that off. 12 times 2 is 24 root 14. Okay, so we've multiplied surds here. Really simple. If they're both under the surd, then you can just put them together and leave them under a surd. If something's outside, it has to stay outside. So these two with the surds, they go together, 5 times 7. But then this one outside, this 2 stays where it is. And then finally, this one, the most complicated one. The ones under the surds, you multiply by each other. So 7 times 8, root 56. And the ones outside of the surds, you multiply them together. 3 times 4 is 12. Finally, you should really look at it at the end and ask yourself, can I simplify the surd any further than it already is simplified? Okay, that's multiplying surds.